I've talked about the importance of setting yourself a budget and following it multiple times on this channel. And nowadays it's easier than ever to do that, as there are plenty of apps out there that allow you to set budgets and track your expenses in real time. Unfortunately, a lot of these apps cost money. I, like many other people when I first started out, did not have the money to pay for these apps. So instead, I made my own budget tracker and tracked my expenses using a simple Excel sheet. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name is Tyler Warlow. I go by the Mengineer, and I make videos on how to improve your life through your confidence, capabilities, and overall happiness. In today's video, I'm going to be going over how I personally built out a budgeting sheet to help me track my expenses and track my budget. And if any of y'all are interested in using the budgeting template, I will have it linked down in the description for free. If this sounds good to y'all, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and join me along in this self-improvement journey. All right, guys, this is going to be the example of the basic budgeting spreadsheet that I started off with when I first started budgeting and saving. Like I said, nowadays I actually use apps that make it super easy to just link all my accounts and have it all in one place. But when I first started, I didn't have the money for that, so I made this simple Excel spreadsheet. Currently, my personal savings rate is sitting at about 50%, thanks in large part to budgeting and saving and tracking all my expenses, but I never would have gotten there if I hadn't started somewhere like with this Excel sheet. So let's go ahead and jump into this. And like I said, if y'all like what you see and you'd like to use it for yourself, it will be linked for free down in the description below. So the first thing that I'm gonna wanna go over is that there's two main areas that you really want to pay attention to. That first is going to be your monthly income, and then the second is going to be your expense tracking. So in other words, the money that you have coming in versus the money that you have going out. So the first thing that I'll go ahead and cover here is the income section. Estimating your monthly income is actually pretty easy if you work a standard W-2 job. In fact, you just take a look at what your last paycheck is and you can enter it into your expected. But the nice thing that I've set up is that you can add as many paychecks as you typically receive in a single month, but you will put in your expected and then you'll put in your actual amount and the date that you received that. So for the sake of this example, I just have someone who's getting paid twice a month and they're getting about $3,000 a month. And that's why you see that total income down here of the $3,000. Again, there's the expected amount and then the actual amount, which helps you just kind of keep track of where you're actually sitting at. One thing to keep in mind here is if you are an hourly employee, I would only budget for your base rate. So don't budget for any overtime or bonuses that you might get, because that's just extra icing on the cake that you'll want to eventually add to some sort of savings rate. You never want to depend on overtime. So what I recommend doing is budgeting based on just your standard 40 hours a week. Now, another thing to keep in mind is if you are not a regular W-2 employee, is that you're going to have to set aside a certain amount for taxes. So you can put in that expected amount, and then it's recommended to typically put about 40% away for taxes. So just for example's sake, I'll quickly show you what I would do. You can easily just enter in, we'll say that it's the same amount, and multiply it by 0.6. and the rest will go towards some form of savings account for you to set aside for taxes later on. But for now, we're not going to really worry about that. We're going to just go ahead and clear this out. And that covers the basics of that monthly income section. Now, the next thing that you're going to see here is the expense tracking. So how I have this set up is I came up with all these different categories that I could think of. Think of your common expenses and write them down. And then you can sort them out into different categories. As you can see, I've got rent, utilities, gas, car maintenance, and then I've got things like my subscriptions. And you want to be as accurate as possible with this. So what I recommend doing is going back through your past bills, going back through your past statements, and really getting a good idea of what you actually spent on this. And really, to be the most accurate, you're gonna wanna go ahead and track your expenses for pretty much every dollar for about 2 to 3 months. Because what I've noticed with people when they first start budgeting and they first start tracking their expenses, they tend to be a little bit more conservative. But once it starts going to the 2 to 3 month range, they start kind of going back to their old habits, and they'll get a more realistic view as to what their spending actually is. Going back to the spreadsheet, we have these different categories, and I have this set up that you can easily just add a category. All you have to do is insert a row and then add whatever category. And then we have the expected amount that you think that you will spend on it, and then the actual amount that you spent on it. So when it comes to the actual spending, we are not going to be directly entering that expense into this cell here. In fact, I actually set up a separate page where we will be doing our expense tracking. So as you can see, I've got a few different things here. We've got a drop-down menu with our category. We've got the vendor, so in other words, who is charging you that money, the amount that you actually paid for that cycle, when you paid it, and any other notes, like if you're someone that likes to keep track of like if someone sent you money versus you sent them, or if you got any credit card points, that would be a good point to put in the notes section. But remember those categories that I pointed out earlier. That's going to be what's in this drop-down menu here. And it's, as you can see, it's really easy to add to that. You just click that edit button and you click add another item. You want to make sure that when you add another item that the spelling matches the category that you set up on the other budget page. So just make sure you do that, or otherwise this won't work correctly. Just to show you all how this works, you go ahead and select a category, and we'll say for instance that we're going to be going with rent, and that the vendor is just the apartment complex, and that this person is paying about $800 a month in rent. And we'll just say that they did that today. And this just helps you to keep track of pretty much any relevant info. Now, what you'll notice is when we go back to the budget sheet that the actual side of our expense tracking now says 800. The nice thing about this sheet is it's going to pull every single time that you put a category in there. So for instance, let's say that we went out to eat multiple times. So we'll say Five Guys burgers for the first time. And we'll say that that was just like an even $25. When we come back over to the budget sheet, you'll see that that says on the eating out category that we're at $25, and that is under our expected amount for spending. However, let's say that we go out to eat a couple more times. We're going to put eating out as the category, and then we'll put steakhouse. Maybe they spent around $50 on that. Then we got coffee. We'll say they spent probably about $6 on that. And if you're the type of person that likes to break their coffee out into a separate category, you can do that. But we're going to go with eating out again. And then we're going to do something to go over our expected amount. So we'll just say that we do the steakhouse again for also $50. When we come back over to our budget, it is totaling all that for us. So anything that we put under eating out, it is totaling that for us under the actual spend. And you'll notice that the cell is now red. Anytime that we go past our expected amount to pay for something, I've set it up so that the cells will turn red to notify you like, hey, whoa, you've gone over what you actually budgeted for this category. As long as you keep it under, there will be no change, but as soon as you go over, you'll notice that it's alerting you with that red color. And that's going to apply to any of these categories as well as your total expenses. So if you end up going over what you expected for your total expenses, it's going to let you know. So now that we've gone ahead and covered both the income and expenses, I now want to touch on another important part of budgeting, which is your savings. Millions of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, which when it comes to the retirement is really not what you want to be doing. You want to be setting aside some extra income so that you have it later down the road or if any emergencies happen. So I put a couple different things in here. I put Roth IRA and 401k for the different retirement accounts, as well as an emergency fund. In terms of emergency fund, a lot of people recommend 3 to 6 months. My fiance and I personally use a 6-month emergency fund. If you are a little bit more risk averse, you might want to aim for something as much as a year. It's really up to you and your personal risk tolerance and what you're willing to have saved up on the side. As well as you're going to want to have anything other that is personal that you want to save for, such as a car or a house in this category. You're going to want to be setting aside this money each month. And personally, I like to treat my savings like an expense. A common saying is pay yourself first. So make sure that you're setting aside that money up front. So for instance, as soon as your paycheck comes in, the money is automatically getting transferred to a savings account of some form. So that way you never have the chance to even use that money and overspend it in the first place. That way it's going ahead and it's getting dedicated to resources and you're not going to be tempted to spend it on something else. But it's going to be the exact same concept here as the other parts of our budget. And again, you'll notice that these cells are red and I'll explain that in a second. So right here, we go ahead and put our expected amounts in here. And for each of those, I just put a straight even $100. And you're going to come over to the actual when that actually happens and the amounts that you have set up for your bank. So let's say that you end up having some extra money at the end of the month and you decide to go over what you normally would go over for the emergency fund that you've been saving up for. And instead of $100, you save $150. You'll notice that the cell turns green. That's just to indicate to you that you're doing a good job and you've gone above what you would have budgeted for normally. You can also just set it to meet the actual amount, and that's just going to be a standard neutral white just to indicate, hey, you've met what your goal was, but it's not anything special per se. Now, what the red cells are for is if you weren't actually able to meet that savings goal, it's going to indicate to you by anything less than the expected amount is going to turn red. And as you see, that applies to our total savings down here as well. Next, I have this little formula set up that's going to help tell you what your overall savings rate is. So in other words, it's going to take all of these savings categories and compare it against your total income and give you what your savings rate is. It's generally recommended for most Americans to be somewhere within the 10 to 15% for savings rate. So you would notice that in this case, this person would be under the ideal amount. Finally, the final thing that I have left in this budget is it would basically take a look at your total amount of income minus your expenses minus your savings. And then it's going to tell you anything that you might have left over. This is a pretty large chunk of change right now because right now we aren't meeting a lot of these expenses. So I'm going to just go ahead and go in and enter these expenses real quick. All right, so now you can see that I got those expenses entered, and just in this case, I made it so they all matched what we estimated. And you'll notice that based on our current budgeting and what we've actually put in, that we still have $194 left over to spend, but that's without any savings in our 401k or for the car. So I'm just going to adjust the savings rates to match what we budgeted, and there you go. Now we have everything matching like we budgeted it to, and we still have some remaining budget for $44. In my opinion, this is something that you can go ahead and recategorize however you best feel is fit. I would personally put it towards saving since I already have stuff budgeted for personal spending like shopping and eating out. So I would just put that money into some sort of savings to help give me a little extra boost in my savings rate. But there you have it, guys. That's the basics of this budgeting Excel spreadsheet. You could easily update this to add more categories and stuff. Just make sure that you apply the formulas to all your cells. And if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments down below if you'd be interested in adding another page to this where I maybe do something like net worth tracking that can dive a little bit deeper and help track your stuff over longer periods of time. If y'all be interested in that, please let me know with a comment down below. But for now, that's the spreadsheet. All right, everyone, that is going to bring us to the end of today's video. Hopefully, y'all found the information in it to be helpful or informative. Again, if y'all are interested in the budgeting template, I will have it linked down in the description below for free. If you found the information in this video to be helpful at all, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to join me along in this self-improvement journey. If you have any of your own thoughts, ideas, or questions, be sure to leave a comment down below. I like to read and respond to all of them. If you're interested in more videos of mine where I talk about financial topics, be sure to check out this video right here where I talk about the financial advice that I wish that I knew when I was 20. If you're interested in more recent videos, be sure to check out this video right here. But until the next time, this is the Mengineer, signing off.